All right, this video is about the National Grange. National Grange sounds like a fancy name, but it's really just about farmers working together to solve some of their problems. So the National Grange was founded in 1867, and the purpose of the National Grange was to help farmers address a wide variety of problems that they faced. If you look at this political cartoon on the left-hand side of the page, you can see one of the main problems that the farmers wanted to combat or wanted to fight against was the fact that they felt that railroad companies back here, represented by this railroad, were damaging and hurting their business. They felt that railroad companies were using extortion, bribery, usurpation, and oppression to hurt farmers. Really, the railroad companies were charging really high rates to farmers to ship their goods. And because the farmers needed the railroad companies to ship their goods, the farmers really didn't have any choice but to pay those high rates. And basically, the point of this cartoon is that the railroad companies were crushing the farmers with these high prices. And that's why you see these actual farmers laying as the railroad tracks. They're being crushed, and there's nothing they could do to stop the railroad companies from crushing them. This cartoon on the right shows a similar sort of frustration that the railroad companies had. In the middle, or the farmers had, excuse me. In the middle, you can see a farmer. Here he's farming with his steel plow and his horses, and he is yelling at everyone around him, "I feed you all of these upper-class bankers and lawyers and judges and business owners and politicians." He said, "I feed you all. I need your help, or I need help. I'm being treated unfairly in the United States." So the basic purpose of the National Grange was to, help farmers with these concerns. And it was founded in 1867. The National Grange was actually really small. It started with 6 members, but eventually became very popular in states like Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas. I have Kansas and Nebraska switched on the map there. Minnesota, and the Dakota Territories. Let's go back a moment. I'm sorry. The National Grange did most of its work in local offices. These local offices or local bureaus or organizations were called granges. And then if you were part of the National Grange, if you were a member of that local grange, you were called a Granger. Over here on the right-hand side is a cartoon, or it's a symbol of what the National Grange symbol. The National Grange, founded in 1867, actually still exists today. And the National Grange provided a wide variety of services. For example, for the most part, early on, they organized social events and meetings for farmers to get together. You can see that up here, and if you're looking on the right-hand side, up here on the right and left-hand corners, you can see you can see some of these meetings where the Grangers are getting together. Over here on the left-hand side is actually a meeting of National Grangers in 2016, the Youth Granger Movement. So this is an organization, again, that still works today and initially started to solve farmer problems by having farmers meet to discuss and figure out what their problems actually were. After they figured out what their problems were, most of the local Grange offices formed what's known as a farming cooperative to purchase farm equipment and farm supplies at lower prices. You remember before we just said that a lot of companies and businesses charged high prices for the stuff that farmers needed. And basically the idea is this, if one or two people asks a store owner, hey, you guys need to help us. Can you charge lower prices or we'll go somewhere else? That store owner is not likely to listen and will kind of say, no, whatever. I don't care if one or two of you go somewhere else. There will be other farmers. But if large numbers of farmers come together, and demand the same thing, you charge us lower prices or we'll go somewhere else, the business owner is likely to, change their policies. There being more farmers, more potential customers, they'd lower the prices to keep a large number of customers instead of just keeping one or two customers. Later on, the National Grange actually developed into a much more political organization where they would petition politicians or ask politicians to make rules and laws to help the farmers, especially with the railroad rates. And again, this sort of worked a lot like the farming cooperatives where farmers negotiated for lower prices with store owners. But this time, it's small groups of farmers asking politicians down here, to make rules and laws to help solve the farmers' problems. And When there's small groups of people, it's politicians really don't care. They don't want it. They don't feel the need to help just one or two people. But when a cause or a group has a much larger base or a group of members, politicians are much more likely to listen to what they have to say. So as the National Grange grew in popularity, as more and more people joined the National Grange, politicians actually they passed rules and laws that would help the Grangers or the farmers. And in fact, in a lot of those states that we mentioned earlier, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Granger laws were passed that set maximum prices that railroads could charge and maximum prices that railroads could charge to farmers to ship their goods. Eventually, the National Grange gained so much power that the Interstate Commerce Act was passed in the United States Congress. So not just local laws were passed, but national laws. The National Grange, again, still exists today, so you could say it's a moderately successful organization that has helped represent farmers in negotiating lower and more fair prices for their goods and lower railroad rates, and has helped petition or lobby government officials to make rules and laws that were beneficial to farmers. And that's the National Grange. How do I stop recording this video? I do.